Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Project. I'm your host, Duke Ong with Tri-City Equity Group. Today we have Jerome Myers on the show. With me is my co-host, Steve Fierros.
Hello, everyone. You guys are going to love today's show. Jerome definitely shares some wisdom and insight with us in his experience in multifamily investing. Shares with us about his method, the Myers method, and definitely shares some good wisdom with us in his experience. So yeah, stay tuned. Make sure you're taking notes. Of course, if you haven't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button and the notifications. And let's keep listening to the show.
Jerome is the founder of Dreamcatchers and the Myers Development Group, where he's built a multi-million-dollar portfolio. His real estate education company, Myers Methods, helps investors learn how to own and operate apartments. He also hosts two podcasts, Dreamcatchers and Multifamily Missteps. Jerome, welcome to the show.
So excited to be with you guys. I kind of wish I was in Hawaii, though. I mean, you don't fly guys out for this show? What's going on?
Maybe after all the quarantine stuff. So for those who aren't familiar, tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you're working on now.
Yeah, man. So I'm a corporate America dropout. I built a $20 million business in my last day job. And the great reward for that was laying people off 2 years in a row. And so I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore after the first time. And when I was forced to do it the second time, I said I was done. And so I thought I was going to go out and buy an apartment building. But when I got to the banks, they told me no. And I got turned away 10 times. And I was going down the list. I got a PE. I got an MBA. I've got money in the bank. I've got a great credit score. And none of those things mattered. I didn't have experience owning apartment buildings. And so I had to go fix and flip houses. And eventually I was fortunate enough to meet somebody who had already had that experience. And we were able to do our first deal together within the first year of me leaving. And from there, I took my talents down south. And so that deal was in Richmond, Virginia. And now I buy primarily in North Carolina.
Got it. So what barriers did you face in getting into multifamily and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I think every investor, not just me, but every investor has 4 barriers that they're working through. The first one is knowledge, right? I can't say everybody, but there's a lot of podcasts out there. And so people can get education through podcasts. I'm a graduate of YouTube University, right? That's where all my education came from, that and podcasts and books. But, I'm making light of a situation that's really serious. Your education makes a huge difference in whether or not you do a profitable first deal or not. And so once you bridge that knowledge gap, then you got to find deal flow. And I think a lot of people confuse leads and deals. And the fact of the matter is they are not the same thing. You can have a lead and lose a bunch of money if you're not careful. And so applying your knowledge to leads equals a deal if you have a deal to be had. From there, you need experience. And this was the thing that really got me, right? I had this formal education as an engineer. I had an advanced business degree. I had built a pretty big business in corporate America, but that experience wasn't enough to get money from the bank. And so I needed somebody who had done a deal of similar size to come in with me. And the bank was right. They gave me the money to do the deal, I'd be bankrupt right now because we blew our construction budget out the water. And I didn't have enough reserves after I did the down payment in order to be able to cover the gap. And so you want somebody with experience before you go into a project. I think a lot of times we're optimistic when we're coming into the space. And so having somebody that's been through it before can help you avoid some of the roadblocks. And then the final piece is capital. A lot of people start with capital. It's like, I don't have any money, I can't do a deal. Doesn't matter if you don't have a deal. Doesn't matter if you don't know how to evaluate leads. So worrying about capital when you're first starting out isn't the best use of your time. Get educated, find a deal, find experienced partners, then worry about the money. And I'll be honest with you, money's looking for deals. And they're looking for experienced operators that are running those deals. And so if you find people to partner with experience and you've been able to find a deal, you'll get your deal done. It's not that if you have a deal, money will follow. It's you have a deal and you have an experienced operator, that money will follow.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes the holistic approach to get a deal across the finish line. So why do you prefer joint ventures over syndications?
right? Like I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina. There was an Army base next door. And, the jets would fly over my house. And I was like, man, I'd love to fly a plane. Ended up being a little bit too tall and weighing too much to be a fighter pilot. But I make light of a really serious metaphor, right? So if we talk about a syndication, think about it like a jumbo jet, right? Everybody gets on, you got the pilot, the stewards and stewardess, and those folks are responsible for taking the plane from point A to point B. They get paid to be on the plane. Then you have all the passengers that get on the plane. Those are the limited partners, right? And the other folks are the general partners in the syndication. For me, a lot of people come into the space and they get confused. They think that being a limited partner is actually getting them some experience. It's really just getting you a report, right? You get the reporting after you put your money in, and your money's probably locked in for 5 years, maybe a little bit longer. And so it troubles me when people position, hey, if you do this deal, you'll get experience, because from a bank's perspective, experience doesn't happen until you sign a loan. And so when I come back over to the joint venture model and we're flying a fighter plane, everybody's got an active role in our deals. And in addition to that, you probably own a bigger piece of the deal. So the likelihood of you being able to get on a loan and actually sign and get that experience box checked by the bank frees up you to go lead your own deals. And so, that's my perspective on it. It's like, I want everybody to have an active role. Selfishly, just getting people's money in the deal isn't enough for me. I want them to bring their intellectual horsepower, and then we can solve problems together. It gets pretty lonely out here as a lone wolf. And so the goal is to bring other people in this space. So I got some people to call and say, hey, we got this problem. What do you want to do about it? Because people who are limited partners don't care. They just want the return.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a kind of mirror approach that we took with our company as well. Started with JVs first. So what is the Myers methods and the 4 steps to a successful deal?
Yeah, so we came up with a 4-step process out of necessity. I spent like 40 hours a week listening to podcasts and watching videos on YouTube. And I ended up most days pretty confused. I was like, what in the world's going on? This guru says that, the other educator says this, and just going back and forth. And I was like, I don't really know what to do. And then I was operating deals and some of the stuff wasn't lining up with the deals. So we created I didn't even come up with that. It sounds really like corny, right? I didn't name it. One of my key principles was like, we're using the Myers methods. And he said it once, I just let it go. He's like, no, we're using the Myers methods. And so when we started having conversations, we realized there's 4 steps. We find, fund, fix, and flip deals, right? So finding it is all your deal flow, working through the leads, making contacts with brokers, talking to owners. The funded phase is when you do all your due diligence, you raise your money, you put your business plan together, et cetera, et cetera. And then fixing it, which is the longest phase, is when you execute against that business plan and make those pivots and adjustments in order to improve the operational efficiency of the business. And then the final piece of it is really, either refining and taking out the money that you put in that BRRRR model that a lot of people talk about, or selling it to somebody who wants the property more than you. And so, we run through that 4-step process on every deal. Everybody's got a variation of it. But, at the end of the day, we find that really accurately reflects what we do and how we think about the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are the challenges that every investor must overcome?
Yeah, so we talked about those already, being the knowledge, deal flow, experience, and capital. The one thing that I struggled with was I thought capital was the first thing when I got started, right? And it's kind of a puzzle. Like the sequence actually matters in how you actually solve those problems. If you don't have any knowledge and you go try to raise money and the person's actually invested in multifamily real estate already, they're going to realize pretty quickly you don't know what you're doing. Do you think they're going to give you the money, right? If you go talk to somebody who has experience, you're like, hey, I want you to mentor me. And they're like, well, what do you know how to do? I don't know how to do anything. So you want me to teach you how to do everything, pay you to do it, and take money out of my pocket? Like none of those things make sense. And so you got to go do your part, and then you go talk to others after you've done your part. And so, people try to do it every which way, and they try to do everything at the same time. You're not going to show up credible when you talk to brokers if you don't have the knowledge. And so just going through that sequence and then marrying it with the 4-step process for Myers methods, I think is a great way for people to get their first deal done and then to scale on their next.
So when you're starting a JV, what are some mistakes to avoid?
Not making sure that you have alignment of values is my favorite mistake to point out. If you're doing a joint venture with somebody, and it's just a business deal in general, right? You want to make sure that the person that you're tying your financial future to sees the world the same way you do, right? You don't have to solve problems the same way. You don't have to agree on everything, but you want your foundational values to be the same, because if they're not, and there comes time to make a decision, you guys aren't going to work through it. I think the next thing is jumping into a partnership with somebody that you don't know. So if you haven't seen the person stress and dealing with some heartache, trouble, or pain, you don't know what's going to happen when something goes wrong with the property and you guys get uncomfortable and have to do something about it. And, if you don't have those two things done, you end up in trouble pretty quickly, because what we like to do is buy deals from partnerships that went bad, right? You sell at a discount, you just want it over. And the fact of the matter is, it's very much like a divorce. Like, people make irrational decisions out of the emotion of being hurt or being frustrated. So, that's what we look for. And that's the most common reason that those properties don't go well.
Yeah, it's a great strategy. What is your why for building passive cash flow?
Yeah, so building passive cash flow is all about freedom, right? Money's just a tool. It amplifies who you are. If you have a lot of money and you're a jerk, you're going to be a bigger jerk. If you have a lot of money and you're very generous, you're going to make a bigger impact. You're going to give and you're going to sow seed. The other piece for me is, it's not just about making money, but it's about making a positive impact in the community. And this is one of the reasons why I like the joint venture model more than the syndication model. In the syndication model, you are really locked into delivering those returns to the investors. And if you don't perform, you don't really get the opportunity to say, hey, we needed to make this other decision. So we did. In the joint venture model, the three of us can jump on the phone and say, hey, here's what's going on. How do you guys want to handle it? And we can make that decision, even if it's not the best decision financially for the business, because all the partners have come to the table and decided that this is the right thing to do, the right thing overall, not just the best thing for profitability.
No, that's definitely good. It helps to keep you nimble, right? It helps to keep, you guys can make better decisions, maybe a little bit faster, and not have to worry about that additional layer of course, making sure the investors are taken care of on the syndication side, right? Like, that's probably, I think you mentioned that earlier too, right? Like the element of control. I think I heard that you mentioned a portion of that, right? Like in the jet and kind of the airliner, you don't have any control on that airliner. If that pilot decides he wants to go to somewhere else, you're going with, you're not. So
along for the ride, baby.
Even if it's going down, right? Which is that's not good. Jerome, I wanted to dive in a little bit more about just kind of circling back to maybe the first deal that you've done. I know you talked a little bit about the challenges, like with the financing and whatnot, but can you give us a little bit more details just about, like, hey, how did you find the deal? How did you kind of get into it? And just give us a little bit more background, give the listeners a little bit more kind of behind the curtains look.
Yeah, so we've done 2 deals off of LoopNet. So I don't believe LoopNet is a place where deals go to die. I think you can buy deals at a decent discount if you do it right. And so we grabbed that deal. We bought it for 1.27. It's a 23 unit in Richmond, Virginia. And we did everything, guys. We did the roof, siding, parking lot, landscaping, tuck a wall out on the first floor, added a half bath, laundry room on the first floor, tile, carpet, paint. I mean, granite, stainless steel, we did everything. And, we were able to take rents from when we took it over at $695 up to $1195 today. We were fortunate to be able to refinance it out, get some cash back. And, now we're operating the property and got it stabilized. And the goal is to either flip it to somebody else or refinance it again with some really long permanent debt from an agency. Right now, that deal was done with the community bank, and they actually had the loan with the previous property owner. And so we went back to them, explained our business plan was not just to put lipstick on a pig, but actually make it a property that they would be proud to have on their balance sheet. When we took the property over, there was a lot of drugs, there was prostitution, there was, it was pretty rough in a very affluent neighborhood in the city. And it was kind of the last eyesore. So Richmond went through a pretty rough time in the mid 2000s. And this was the property that was kind of hold over from that point of history. And the rest of the neighborhood had gentrified pretty aggressively. So homes that used to sell for 200 were now selling for 400. And this property was still, kind of the $200 or $200,000 like fit and finish. And so we took it up to that next level to attract young professionals. And that project was really painful at times. We didn't do a lot of things right. We didn't get construction permits early on, and that hosed us a little bit. There was some settlement at the property, and that caused the drainage pipe to snap. And we had to put in a new drainage pipe, which was a $30,000 expense that we didn't expect. And I mean, I could go on and on all the things that we tripped over in doing the deal. But the fact of the matter is we got that deal done, and we were able to make a huge improvement in the community. And, we were able to bump rents. When we went in, we thought we were only going to be able to go from like $695 to $850. And so to be at $1195 now is just, we're extremely excited and ecstatic about it.
Oh, that's huge. That's a huge jump. Now, just to clarify that one was because I know you were flipping, right? So this was multifamily, or this was a single family?
This is a 23 unit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you had to go in and do replace the drainage piping on a 20. Wow. So yeah, a big project, no doubt.
Huge project. Yeah. And the funny part is one of the guys that I partnered with on that deal. So I was sitting on the porch of one of my fix and flip houses, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm doing a house down the street. Let me check out what you guys have got going on in here. See what your fit and finish is, so we know what we should expect to do on ours." And through that conversation, he said, "Hey, I want to go buy that building in Churchill." It's like, man, don't leave me out. And he went and made it out me. I was looking for it. He made the offer without me. Eventually, I got back in the deal, but he left me out after I asked him not to. I won't ever forget that.
But he's still he's still a partner of yours, though.
He's a partner on that deal. We had other deals together.
I got you.
South Beach not really South Beach. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, but I went down south. Now that I had the experience, I could go do my own deals.
What a great eye-opening way to cut your teeth, right? Like to get your teeth started on a deal like that, where, but it's almost the best way, right? Like that way you kind of, all right, it wasn't just all rose petals and unicorns, right? You had to actually get in, get your hands dirty, dive in, and now okay, those are different roadblocks along the way, and now you know how to handle, right? Or things to look out for too, right? So.
If anybody tells you that buying a C-class asset and they repositioned it and nothing went wrong, they're lying. There's all kinds of issues in every project. And I mean, running a business, like I think people romanticize this thing in a way that is not practical. You're running a business, guys, and there's going to be things that go wrong. There's going to be things that you couldn't plan for, and you need to do something. And you've got to be willing to do it. Your plan could be amazing. You can do whatever you want in your spreadsheet and make all the numbers look pretty and nice. And as soon as you show up and add people to the mix, everything can go the wrong way. And so, you just want to make sure that you have somebody that's experienced so that when that engine goes out in that plane, they can land it safely. Because, I mean, that's the name of the game. And, the other piece I will say, and I can't emphasize this enough, had the bank been silly enough to give me the money to do the deal by myself, I'd be bankrupt right now because of all of the unexpected expenses. I couldn't cover it all. And once you're in the project, you got to finish. You just have to keep feeding the beast. And so I'm really grateful that I had more partners in the deal than I did, because we wouldn't have got out of it.
We need to start a show, right? They got the show on like fix and flip houses, and those are quick, right? And like real popular. And we could do fix and flip, like reposition apartment buildings and all the drama that can come along with that too, right?
Well, they don't drama though. Everybody wants the bow. They want the fairy tale. They want the ending. And that's why we started Multifamily Missteps. We want people to come into the space either eyes wide open, or we want operators to not feel inadequate if something doesn't go as planned, because the biggest names in the industry are having issues and they've made mistakes as well.
Right. Yeah. You can't go through the woods without getting nicked up a little bit. Right. As long as you get to the destination, that's the key. So looking back on that deal, if you had to pick out like one thing, like the biggest mistake, let's say, something that you could draw on from, but like what would you say that was?
Yeah, I think my thing is, John Kasman said it on Multifamily Missteps best, like respect is non-negotiable, right? So when we were going through the due diligence, there was a ton of me asking a bunch of questions just because I wasn't certain about what we were doing. And when we got to the place where it was time to close, there was pressure to close. And I wasn't ready to close because we hadn't gotten all the documents in place that we needed. We didn't have a signed property management contract. We didn't have a signed asset management contract. We didn't have a signed general contractor contract. And because we didn't have those things, I wasn't comfortable closing because I wanted to make sure everything was solidified. I didn't want to get into the ownership and then try to figure some stuff out. And, those were the critical pieces of actually executing our business plan. And so we went through that and, guys were like, hey, Jerome, if you don't put your money in, then we'll just buy your shares and you'll be left out in the cold. It's nice that you helped us with due diligence, but, it's time to close and you need to put your money in. And I was like, I'm not ready to close. And so if people are at that place where they don't respect your voice and see wisdom in what you're trying to do, it's probably best that you not do the deal just because of the friction that will follow. And the thing is, once you're in the deal, the only way to get out is to sell it or have somebody buy you out. And usually when they buy you out, you're leaving money on the table, or you're selling your stuff at a discount because you just went out that bad. And you got to take all the emotion out of the business and do what's most practical for what you're working towards. And I think a lot of people just rush. They have a one night stand at a conference. They go into business with this person, and then they start finding out that the person's perfect and that they can't do anything wrong. And it's everybody else's fault when stuff happens, and it just becomes a nightmare on Elm Street. I hate that for people. I know people are hungry to do deals, and you got to vet your folks and know them well. Everybody that I do deals with now, they've either come through our training program or I've known them since college or high school, or at least 10 or 15 years. And I know their wives, I know their kids. It's more of a friends and family environment than anything else.
That's great. I mean, what great advice for partnerships in general. For one, just because hey, when the stuff hits a fan, right? Like you got to know who you're in the trenches with, right? How people are, and you talked about that a few times already earlier. It's like, all right, like these are your partners, and this, just like you said, right? This is your financial future. You've got to know, hey, how's this going to shake out, right? So with all that being said, and these bumps and bruises and kind of all of that you've kind of faced along the way, are you still actively looking for deals now? Let's say with your group, or is it just hey, you know what? As the deals come up, is it I'm only going to take the stuff on by myself, or only JVs, or how does that work for you now? Are you still actively looking for deals?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the goal is we're working on 1,000 doors. That's the mission, is to grow the portfolio to 1,000 doors. And we'll probably partner with 100 people throughout those different joint venture transactions. We're in the process of a 120 unit development deal here in Greensboro, North Carolina. We put things under contract as they come up. One of the things that we're excited about is we get the first look on most deals here that are under 100 units. And we like to send LOIs before anybody else drives by the property if it makes sense for us. So, we want to be the market maker in the market that we're in. And we're going to do a combination of buying existing assets that have a really strong value add component and building new. And, we're going to do that for the foreseeable future because people need a place to live. We have a pretty high household formation to household created gap here in this market. And Charlotte and Raleigh have seen very similar things. Greensboro is the third largest city in North Carolina. And so, we sit in a pretty good spot.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, yeah. I definitely know that your market over there is growing. I know that's been a kind of a hot spot here for a little bit now, right? And it's probably exacerbated by the a lot of this craziness that we've got going on right now. Hopefully, by the time our listeners are listening to this episode, all of this COVID nonsense is blown over. But in the moment, we're right in the thick of it, and but I know that expansion is happening that way. So that's great. So for these properties that you're acquiring, the deals that you're going after, kind of, if you don't mind sharing, what's your kind of favorite like ninja trick for increasing, NOI? Is that more by increasing income, decreasing expenses? Do you have like no, this is a go-to, we're going to go to this first. And, this is we're going to bust out the bag of tricks here.
My deal is we look for 150 increase per door in NOI over the first 18 months, right? And what does that look like? It could be we like it's pretty easy to identify a property that's under what market rent is, right? And everybody says, "Oh yeah, this is under market rents. We're going to boost rents by $100. We're going to do $4,000 to $5,000 on the rehab, and boom, 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 it's going to be perfect." It doesn't really work like that, right? Because it's a stair step and everybody doesn't leave all at once and everybody doesn't come back at the new and everybody doesn't renew at the new rate and so on and so forth. But what I can say is like, you've got to have that progressive trend in the right direction towards that number that you're looking for. So you do want to increase rent. There's always got to be some increase in rent because top line is the lifeblood of the property. If rent isn't growing then in that market, then your market's dead and there probably really isn't an opportunity for you to have a thriving business. It might work in the first 2 years, but when you get into the deeper part of the cycle, 4 or 5, when it's time to refi or extend your loan or whatever else, you're going to end up in a place where you might not be able to appraise. And that part is really scary. On the operational side, when you're managing your expenses, we've been able to do some pretty, I think, amazing things. We've run some units for $200 or less per door per month, and other people were running them in the 3s and 400s. And so when you can cut expenses down that low and still take care of the things that need to be taken care of, you get a really dramatic increase in your net operating income. And so what we look for is utilities, because that's one of the biggest contributors. If the owner's paying all the utilities, we want to get that off our books and get it back to the residents, more so on the electric bills than anything else. Electricity is a huge, huge bill. And so if we can get that off the books, it's almost $75 per month per unit by itself. If you add in water, that's probably another 40. And so right there, you got about $110 a month in NOI that you got off your books. The other thing that I think is pretty or something that you can see on the P&L, when you look at the repairs and maintenance budget, you want to go through and look at the bills for those and see, hey, is this owner sending handymen to do jobs or are they sending tradesmen? There's a huge difference in those costs. And if you can get a handyman to do the majority of the work and a tradesman to only do things that are permitted, you're going to drive your costs down dramatically on your repairs and maintenance. So, those are, I think, the two big things that we look for when we're going into a deal and trying to identify things that we can do to improve the net operating income.
Yeah, it's great advice. So shifting gears to our fire round, what is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Yeah, the Little Purple Book is something everybody reads, right? I'm going to give a shameless plug. So I wrote a book called Your Dreams Should Be Real. And it just walks through the process of, why you need to actually make your dream a reality and how the world's counting on you. And I think people forget that. Like as kids, we often dream, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I was a kid that had Lamborghinis and Ferraris on the wall. And, I still need to do that, right? Because that's what I dreamed of as a kid. It's like we can become adults and we think, hey, I don't need to dream anymore. I just need to settle into this 9 to 5 and get the white picket fence and all this other stuff. And eventually after 40 years, I might get to retire and spend 5 years, trying to live out the things that I don't actually have the energy to do but now I have the time freedom because I've got enough money in this account. I think people should live their dreams now, and you just have to figure out a way. When I was probably 4 or 5, my mom and I were playing in the front yard, and she said I wanted to be like the trash man. In fact, I wanted to be a trash man. I told my mom that. And she was like, baby, that's not going to pay for the Nikes and all the nice things you like. And I was like, Mom, but he's home every day at like 3. My dad worked Carolina half days. He'd leave before 6 a.m. and he'd come back around 6 p.m. and we'd have dinner. And sometimes I'd be hungry and I'd be mad because he wasn't home yet, right? But Lonnie was home at 3. He had all kinds of time freedom. And my mom was like, well, you need a job so that you can pay for those things. And it was great advice, except the job word. I needed an income source, right? We get tied up and believe that a job is a way that we make money. No, we can create businesses or buy businesses like apartments that bring money to us, and it's independent of our time. And once we have that time freedom, we've decoupled our time from money. We're able to go off and live these really, really amazing lives. And so, that's the game, is helping people realize that their dreams can be real, and they just have to work through the process in order to make it so.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then that's pretty much why I'm doing all this too, is to get that time freedom. What is your superpower?
I think so many people have become calloused and insensitive. Like we've lost humanity, right? We want to be perfect. We want to present like we're perfect in the world and like nothing impacts us and our businesses are going exactly as planned and all these things. And they're not, right? And the reality and being willing to accept that allows you to actually fix it instead of pretending. And I think the other piece of that is like people going into the world are exhausted because they're pretending that they are something that they aren't, instead of telling people, hey, here's where I am, here's where I want to go, and seeing if anybody will raise their hand to help them go down that path. My mom always told me, hey, if your car breaks down, you're a whole lot better off starting to push your car than sitting in it and pushing the flasher button. If you sit in the car, and you guys will see it as you go down the road now, somebody's sitting in the car with the flashers on, everybody drives around and they don't do anything. Soon as somebody gets out and starts pushing that car, other people show up and it's like ants, and they get the car out the way and everybody celebrates and they move on to the next thing. And that's what we have to do. We have to get out and start pushing our own car and let people know, hey, this isn't working, right? Because it's kind of embarrassing when your car breaks. But if people know that you're struggling with something, they care and they're going to try to help. And so, I help and I care. And, I think that's a superpower these days.
Yeah, definitely. It's rare in this world. For the working professional who's looking to achieve financial freedom, what advice or tips do you have?
Yeah. So you got to go to zero. Like you want to drive your bills down as low as possible. Then you want to create as much income as you can. And because financial freedom for me isn't replacing your income, it's replacing the money that it takes to pay your bills. Once you are able to achieve enough passive income to pay your bills, then you're 100%er. And at that point, you have the freedom and flexibility to double down on what you're doing if you think you can scale that and increase your income, or go do something else that you really enjoy doing. I dream of a world where, my daughters can go do whatever job they want to do and not care about what it's going to pay, right? Because their living is taken care of through a stream of income that they don't have to really do anything for. Right? That is what I think ultimate freedom is. And, that's the way you create it. So, I used to have a Nissan GTR and a huge house, right? And I don't need that stuff anymore. I was buying a bunch of stuff to fill holes in my soul. I wasn't fulfilled at work. And so I was justifying the work I did with the things I had. And once I gave up the work that wasn't fulfilling and got fulfillment from helping people, grooming them, and, actually making an impact in the community through the investing, I was able to have that peace and not need, a Nissan GTR. Now I drive a Toyota Camry. It's just like making those transitions and shifting into priorities and knowing, hey, those things exist. And, as things grow, I can go back to that if I want to, right? It's just about the option, not actually having a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely just a shift of priorities, right? So yeah, as we wrap this up, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so myersmethods.com, MYERSMETHODS.com gives you a free 4-step guide. It goes deeper on why we like joint ventures over syndications and can help people get the ball rolling or get them into that next deal from a multifamily perspective. Also really active on LinkedIn. That's how I connected with you guys. And so, if you want to grab some content and hear from a guy who cares every now and again and get some encouragement, we'd love to find you on LinkedIn.
All right, great. Thank you so much for being on the show.
This was awesome, guys. Thanks for having me.
Wow, dude, what a great show with Jerome Myers. He shared with us that, the Myers method, and what a caring guy too. He's a real big on JVs, and hopefully you guys got some great gems from that show. He definitely went into what the 4 barriers for typically to most investors would be: knowledge, deal flow, experience, and capital, and he dives into that. So that was great. He definitely prefers JVs. Now, obviously, we've done both and we have experience in both, and so just understanding the pros and cons and the benefits and who you are as an investor. So he dives in a little bit more about that, which was great. And again, he shared with us his methodology, the Myers method, as he calls it. Some of you may be familiar with it in different terminology, but the process of finding the deal, funding the deal, fixing the deal, and flipping the deal. It's what he's coined as, the Myers method. Something he gives some really good advice for JVs and partnerships in general about, how you really want to have an alignment of values, and knowing that going into whatever type of partnership it is, whether it be a syndication or a joint venture. I think it's absolutely key. So that was great that he did mention that. So he definitely had some more gems to the show. I can't possibly give it all right here. So make sure you go back and listen to it. Share with your friends, of course. Make sure that you're letting people know about the show. And if you love this content, of course, continue to subscribe to it. Continue to get your notifications about it. But what a great show with Jerome.
And if you found value in this podcast, please subscribe so you get the latest episodes. We would love it if you give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. If you know anyone who might resonate with today's podcast, please share the episode with them. And to connect with like-minded investors, join our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily and More. If you're interested in connecting with us, go to tricityequity.com to learn more. See you next time.